In this short tutorial, we will figure out how to calculate the recessionary gap. The recessionary gap is the amount of money that the government should spend or reduce in taxes in order to close the GDP gap. The formula for calculating the recessionary gap is GDP gap divided by the multiplier. The procedure for calculating the recessionary gap is to 1. Write down the formula for the recessionary gap. This is GDP gap divided by multiplier. Substitute in the GDP gap into the formula. Substitute the multiplier into the formula. And 4. Divide the GDP gap by the multiplier. Let's look at an example. A government determines that there is a gap of $10 billion and the multiplier is 4. How much money will the government need to spend in order to close the GDP gap? First step is to write down the formula, GDP gap divided by multiplier. Second is to locate the GDP gap in the problem. In this case, our GDP gap is $10 billion. Our next step is to substitute in the $10 billion into our formula. The next step is to locate the multiplier in our problem, and the multiplier is 4 in this problem. Next step is to substitute 4 in for the multiplier into the formula. Next is to divide 10 billion by 4, and this gives us an answer of 2.5 billion. So our final answer is the recessionary gap is 2.5 billion, and the government will need to spend $2.5 billion to close the GDP gap.